This faculty meeting would be taking place in the district's elementary school, which houses the grades 4 and 5 for the entire township. In this school, there are about 625 students and about 63 teachers and paraprofessionals, making the faculty to student ratio about 10 to 1. It's in a suburban community that's predominantly middle class. Welcome everyone. Welcome back to the 2015-2016 school year. I'm your assistant principal for the year, Mrs. Berman, and I hope you all enjoyed the faculty breakfast and had a chance to catch up with your colleagues this morning. I hope you're also feeling refreshed like I am after summer vacation and ready to start the year anew. So to begin today's faculty meeting, I wanted to remind you all about something very important, and that's our school's vision and mission statement. So I'm just going to read it to you, and I hope you will consider posting this vision and mission statement in your classrooms to articulate to your students as well, so they're also aware of our goals. Students will become lifelong learners, critical thinkers, and creative problem solvers who achieve success as honorable members of society. We are committed to meeting or exceeding the New Jersey core curriculum content and Common Core state standards at all grade areas and in all subjects, and providing a safe and supportive environment where students are inspired, empowered, and encouraged to excel. So our question for you is, how can we realize these goals and make this vision come alive in our classrooms every single day? So I'd like you to think about that for a moment and talk to the colleagues at your table. I'll give you a few moments to do that. Okay, can I have your attention back over here? Thank you so much. And I heard some excellent feedback while I was walking around. And I know that most of you are doing all these things in your classrooms already. But what you're basically mentioning are things that are going to become our 10 principles of effective teaching and learning for this school year. And these will also become the 10 look-fors I will evaluate during observations. Now, if you remember from last year, non-tenured teachers will be observed about 3 times annually, and veteran teachers will be observed twice. So, some of the things that I heard you say were, 1, setting and communicating clear objectives, establishing a positive classroom environment, exercising effective classroom management, using higher order questioning and discussion techniques in your classroom, implementing the gradual release of responsibility model, authentic student-centered learning, ongoing assessments, the differentiation of instruction, cooperative learning, and demonstrating knowledge of the content and resources. These are going to become our research-based best practices for this year, and I'm going to talk about each one in depth. So let's first talk about number 1, setting and communicating clear objectives. This is very important that every teacher takes the time to consider where their children are when they're entering the lesson and where it is that they would like their children to end up by the end of the lesson. You need to communicate clear lesson outcomes or objectives that align with the Common Core standards and are rigorous as well. It's really important that the children are aware of these learning objectives because it actually provides them and you, the teachers, direction in their learning. We want to make sure these lesson objectives are clearly stated in student-friendly language. Consider posting them in your classroom in the form of I can statements. For example, in a math lesson, you might state on the board, I can use all 4 operations, addition, multiplication, subtraction, and addition, to solve number stories. Or in English language arts, you might say, I can determine the theme of a literary passage and cite textual evidence to support my ideas. If I were coming in for an observation, I might ask one of your students to articulate the learning objective, expecting that they have internalized it and can explain it to me, because that's very important. In addition, you want to make sure that your learning objectives measure both, or they reflect both conceptual understandings and basic knowledge. Number 2, establishing a positive classroom environment. Now this one's really important because according to the research, the children are going to achieve more and feel more willing to take risks when they're in a classroom environment that's nurturing and caring. And in order to provide this, the teacher has to keep in mind that he or she has the power to create that tone in the classroom with the way they speak to the students and their body language. When I come in for observations of teachers, I'm going to look not only at teacher-student interactions, but also at student-student interactions. I'll expect that they're taking turns nicely, that they're respectful, polite, and caring in their exchange of words with each other. In establishing a positive classroom climate, it's also important that the teacher is culturally responsive to the diverse backgrounds of their students, and the teacher should demonstrate a deep knowledge of their students' personal lives outside of the classroom. That way, this teacher makes that student feel valued. The next one we have is exercising effective classroom management. Now, according to the research, if there's a classroom that has a clear set of rules and appropriate teacher monitoring, those students are going to actually develop a higher sense of autonomy, and that's going to initiate a higher interest in the subject area. In order to establish classroom management routines, I encourage you to collaborate with your students. During the first week of school, invite them to help you create a classroom constitution or a set of rules to post on the wall. You want them to take ownership of the classroom management system as well. It's also important that all of your transitions between activities, or perhaps your transition from the rug to the desks during readers or writers workshop, is absolutely seamless and does not interfere with the flow of instruction. The entire purpose of effective classroom management is so that you can maximize your instructional time, and you can also maximize the time students are engaged in academic tasks.
Go.
I'll also be able to spot excellent classroom management when I come into your room for an observation or a walkthrough, and I note that the children are able to follow through with procedures and routines, even in the absence of teacher supervision. Number 4, using higher order questioning and discussions. Now, in our traditional classrooms, questioning was typically teacher-centered and mostly used just to evaluate student understanding. We now as teachers want to model how to ask questions so our students can initiate discussions and ask questions as well. In our constructivist classrooms, we actually want students to be able to understand that questioning is used for several purposes: to self-monitor, to clarify understanding, to conduct research, and to extend knowledge and learning, and promote generative knowledge, which is more expansive learning. When I come into your classroom for an observation, I'm going to be interested in seeing students highly engaged in their activities, questioning each other, and participating actively in the discussions. And you also want to remember that the questions you pose should allow for multiple approaches and multiple responses. Number 5, implementing the gradual release of responsibility model. Now in your classrooms, most of you will be doing readers and writers workshop and even guided math. All of these workshop models align with Marzano's philosophy about the workshop, which embodies the gradual release of responsibility. In other words, you're going to want to begin your lesson with explicit, direct instruction, a lot of teacher modeling. The mini lesson part is when you are giving your children the essential knowledge they will need so they can then go along and actively construct the knowledge and apply it to different situations. So following direct instruction by the teacher, you will then engage your students actively in guided practice. You'll want to provide your students with an activity that they can do that practices the skill or the strategy that you modeled in the mini lesson. This might take place, for example, in the form of a think, pair, share, or a partner turn and talk on the rug, and the teacher would circulate and take the pulse of the class. Following this guided practice, the students would be released, either independently or maybe in pairs, to work independently on that task. At this time, the teacher can be conferring with students as well. So at this time during independent practice, it's expected that as a result of the modeling and the guided practice, the child has taken full ownership of learning and full responsibility. In other words, the responsibility for learning has been released to the child.